Adjunct Professor Moran, Macroeconomics 111. You're practicing with equilibriums. Equilibrium, price, and output levels. What are the equilibrium, price level, and output? That would be P and Y. Price and Y. Y is an abbreviation often used by economists to symbolize income. And remember that GDP is an income measure as well as an output measure as well as an expense measure. So that's why they're symbolizing this with Y on the worksheet. What would eventually happen to price level and output if initial price level were P2 rather than P? Okay. If we were here at this price level, aggregate demand would be less than aggregate supply. Business inventories would be building in an unplanned way, and that's bad. The inventories cost money. So it would be in the interest of businesses to make less real output. And as they make less output, they're going to lay off resources, and they will lay off their least productive resources first, which increases productivity. And as a result, average costs go down, which are passed along to consumers in the form of lower prices. So you're moving down this way. In the face of lower prices, consumers will buy more real output. Now, remember that one aggregate demand curve has a negative relationship between real output and price level because of the real balance effect, the interest rate effect, and the foreign purchases effect. What causes a line to have a negative relationship is what causes it to move from one point to another. This is as opposed to white for consumers, for example, which causes a shift in aggregate demand. So these things are explaining this. In the face of lower price levels, a consumer's savings and investment accounts will be able to buy more real output. More real output in the face of lower price levels. A dollar goes further when the rate of inflation falls. The interest rate effect. At lower price levels, consumers don't need to borrow as much to buy output, so the demand for money will fall. As the demand for money falls, the price of money, which is interest rates, will also fall. As the interest rate falls, people may in fact borrow more money to buy durable goods. So as interest rates move with price level, assuming the quantity of money is fixed, then durable good orders will go up, increasing real output. The foreign purchase effect. As price level falls, as our goods go up at a lower rate, they may look more attractive to foreigners, and so exports will go up. And as price level falls, we may buy less imports, we may buy more domestically made goods, the foreign purchase effect, and that explains the movement on one line. What would eventually happen to the price level output? And that is an explanation of how we're going to go from this equilibrium. If we start at this disequilibrium, how we're going to end up at this equilibrium. It's going to be in the self-interest of both the consumers, CIGGXN, as well as businesses to reach this equilibrium. Okay. If we're at P1, then this would be the quantity of output supplied, and this would be the quantity of output demanded. And now what's happening is there's an unplanned inventory increase. Unplanned inventory. Here there was an unplanned inventory increase, which is bad. Here there is an unplanned inventory decrease. People are buying more than businesses are producing. I may have said that backwards. Excuse me. Unplanned inventory increase. Inventories are expensive, so business will seek to eliminate them by reducing output. But here, there is an unplanned inventory decrease. So business thought they were going to sell 10, they only sold, they sold 12. And so the inventory, there's an unplanned inventory decrease, which is good. Business will increase production. As they increase production, they'll be forced to use less productive methods of manufacture. And that will drive their productivity down and average costs up, which will be passed along to consumers in the form of higher prices. In the face of higher prices, again, this is not white, wealth indebtedness, tax expectations. This is the real balance, interest rate, and foreign purchases effect. And so in the face of higher prices, the real purchasing power of people's financial accounts isn't as great. You can't buy as much. If you have $100 in the bank, and now you could buy $100 with output, but if that output is now 110, you can't buy as much with output because of the higher prices, there's no balance effect. In the face of higher interest rates, people can't buy as much output as they used to. To maintain the same standard of living, people may go to the bank and borrow money. If everybody does that at the same time, the demand for money increases, the price of money, which is interest rates, goes up, and as a result, consumers won't be able to afford as many durable goods. Less real output, interest rate effect. In the face of higher prices, a higher rate of inflation, foreign goods may look more attractive to us, so imports will go up, which is a negative to our GDP. Also, foreign goods may look more competitive, so we may increase our imports. And so that will cause less real output to be produced in our country, resulting in unequal living. Here are some examples of shifters for supply, aggregate supply, and aggregate demand. And we want to describe what's happening to the price level and output. Congress passes a tax cut for middle-class tax cuts. This is consumption, wealth, indebtedness, taxes, expectations. That's going to be an increase in aggregate demand from AD1 to AD2. Price level is going to increase, and output is going to increase. Price level increase, output increase. Unemployment will fall. During a recession, government increases spending on schools, highways, other public works. Think for a minute. Is that aggregate demand or aggregate supply? It's aggregate demand. C-I-G-G-X-N. Since G is increasing, aggregate demand will increase. Again, price level increases because we're in the intermediate range, and GDP goes up. Unemployment falls. New oil reserves cause large decreases in energy prices. Think for a minute. Is that aggregate supply or aggregate demand? That's something that affects underlying business profitability. It's a reduction in resource costs, which is an aggregate supply issue. Short-run aggregate supply will increase, causing lower rates of inflation and more real output. Unemployment will fall. This shows the effect of an increase in aggregate demand. These were both examples of an increase in aggregate demand causing price level to rise, GDP to fall, GDP to rise, unemployment to fall. An increase in production costs would be a supply shock, an increase in the price of oil, for example. Short-run average supply would decrease, price level would increase, GDP would fall, price level increases, GDP falls, and unemployment rises. This is the worst case scenario of the economic situation possible. Inflation, unemployment, cost push inflation, a supply shock, stagflation. Examples of equilibrium.